So an example, for instance, is like making wudu from water which a cat has drunk, as an example. Just keep it like that. So keep it simple. Don't complicate it too much for right now, because we're learning new terminology, we're learning new words. It becomes too complicated. So the opposite is, for instance, so here the tahriman or tahrimi, right? It's prohibited. It's like the haram, right? This rule is the opposite of wajib, right? Performing these acts is a sin. The only difference is that how we came to conclude, remember we talked about the language? How we came to conclude, I don't want to go into a lot of detail in this, but that the evidence of how we came to conclude that this is makruh tahrimi is by the evidence, which is open to more than one interpretation. Right? And so they said, they went to the extent of saying that if you deny this, is a sense of misguidance, but it's not disbelief. That's what, like the haram, if you deny the haram intentionally, it can be a form of disbelief in the deen. That's why I want to take these definitions slow, because there's a lot involved in this. But I just want you to understand that when they say makruh tahrimi or makruh tanzihi, it's not just a what? It's not just a label that's put out there. There's a systematic way that was achieved, right? And the biggest difference between those two categories of tahrimi and tanzihi, the tahrimi says, it's a sin. And, is the opposite of wajib. And we said that wajib is what in comparison to fard? What did we say about it? Both of them are obligation. We said fard and wajib. We said it's just of a lesser degree. So it's the same thing when we look at the wajib category. It's the same thing. When we look at the wajib category, he says slightly weaker than fard in terms of performance, right? And then he says here, denying wajib is not disbelief, but it can be sinful, because this now is dealing with the obligations. So these are things, I don't know this. Who signed up for this class? Yeah, that's important, because we have to get you this book, PDF. And one thing I advise is that you bring notebooks. You bring notebooks, because a lot of this stuff. That's why I'm kind of going slow with this, although I wanted to enter into the actual discussion of fiqh. Because, once you understand this, then you don't go around and saying haram. You know what I'm saying? You don't go around saying haram for everything. You could
send us the PDF prior to the class. We can at least prepare something, and then that will help us and help you to.
No doubt that one of the things that has to be done, I was kind of filling out the class, is just giving an outline, of what we aim to cover, what we have covered. And the same thing with the tafsir class, to kind of like start, yarhamukallah, so that we can start what? We can start organizing our thinking. But this part is the most richest part. If you understand this part, these terms, your life will change completely as far as you understand the deen and scholarship. Because then you realize, no, it's not just the issue of just saying halal, haram. That's not that easy. The other side is this. I want to add this, and we can end. We didn't mention this with a lot of detail. But when we look at the word sunnah, the word mandub means recommended. this category in the fiqh, like you have the word mandub, mustahab, all these words come in sunnah. All these words really kind of mean the same thing. So they kind of mean the same thing. But here in this classification, the Hanafis, they tend to detail. And so one of the details here is that, for instance, when we talk about sunnah, we're talking about those things which are recommended to do. All of obligation, the Prophet did it. That which is recommended, the Prophet did it. So when we talk about sunnah, don't, in the fiqh sense, don't get confused in saying that it's what the Prophet did. The Prophet did the obligations too. Sunnah here is the opposite of wajib, or is not an obligation, that type of thing. But the mandub category, when it's defined as sunnah, we're looking at here sunnah mu'akkada, or that which is emphasized. I left it in the Arabic so we can start learning the terminology properly. Is that which the Prophet did consistently. So just because we say something is sunnah, it doesn't just stay at that. We're looking at sunnah, and then we're looking in the mandub category. What was done consistently? Then we recommend it. This was done consistently, it shouldn't be left off. But it's not at the same level as an obligation. And then he did non-consistent at it, but he did it sometimes. It's غير مؤكدة. So that's within the realm of the mandub. Okay, so then now you have this sunnah zawaid. These are the things like how the Prophet looked, how he ate, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, how he slept. Be separate out. This is not at the same level as this. See what I'm saying? If you do this with the intention to follow the Prophet, there's reward, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But we shouldn't say it's at the same level. And neither should we belittle it either. We shouldn't belittle it as well. Oh, that's just a sunnah that the Prophet did in his life, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's not respectful, and it's not, part of the deen.
Was it like an enhancement?
I would personally say that in this realm here, for instance, the issue of beard. This is not like, for instance, some of the scholars tried to say that it was just like something the Prophet did personally. No, across the board, everyone agrees. The whole debate is about the length and all that in today's time. But before, there was no disagreement prior to the colonial period about the beard. The reason why I'm saying that is because some of the things will create culture. Like the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam eating, with his fingers. Eating with the right hand is not just something, it's something that we have clear text about. It's not just culture. You know what I'm saying? Certain types of meals, the way that they will cook, you find that the Muslims across the board, they will imitate it regardless of their culture. So some things from this angle, it will create culture.
I was not clear about the beard.
The beard is considered an obligation across the madhab. It's just an exception to the rule, which is when, the Shafi'is, they gave two rulings on it, and it kind of opened up to a big discussion on the beard. But what happened was that in the Muslim world with colonialism, when colonialism came, there was a lot of pressure that was put on the Muslims. And so sometimes wearing a beard meant your incarceration, like in places like Egypt and otherwise. And so a lot of discussion went into the beard. Some scholars like Sheikh Abu Zahra, he went in his own, and he said, there was just a practice of the Arabs. But, nobody really agreed with that. Everyone agreed that, the beard was an obligation. And then it became exceptions to the rule from the angle of what was happening in people's countries.
What about the length?
The length is debated. Yeah, it's debated. The length is debated amongst the ulama. Mostly the Indo-Pak scholars are very strict with that. Yeah. The most of them are not only Hanafi scholars of hadith, but they became, and part of that was trying to maintain the deen. But there was other issues that were not looked at. Like, for instance, if you're going to be a medical doctor, you're in an environment, what's the culture of that place? How does it impact you? Some of them didn't. It's like, deen is deen, but that doesn't work like that 100%. And like we said, in Egypt, that was leading to people's incarceration. So that's where all that debate. But in where all things are neutral, so to speak, alhamdulillah, yani it's, huh?
They practice it freely.
Yeah, I mean, practice it freely. We're in a society where, alhamdulillah, the beard is coming back into culture, custom. Now they have beard. You have, beard oil and all. There was a time period because this culture is influenced by the Romans. So the Romans were the ones that shaved. But now the whole concept of manliness in this environment, it has been allowed. But again, there's debates amongst the scholars in that regard.
Christian priests and Christian scholars, they have big beard too, right?
The priests of the Orthodox side. The Roman side, no. The Roman side, they followed the Roman customs. But the Orthodox side, like the Greeks and the Ethiopians and all of those, and some of the Egyptians, right? They followed the side of the beard. But we end on that note because we went a little over the time. So I hope that that's kind of clear, of how the overall framework works. We'll go into more detail. But this is important for our study of what comes next. Is important because without this classification, you won't be able to determine if something is valid or invalid. If you don't have that classification system, you won't be able to judge if your action is right or wrong.
One clarification for myself. So, for the Fard Ain and for the Kifaya, if we are looking at the Salatul Janaza, right? The Hanafi is putting into two categories, that Fardul Ain and Fardul Kifaya. Kifaya is like more for the community to perform.
Some community members perform it. It's an obligation on all of us until somebody does it.
How the other madhab
They look at
think that it is all fard on everybody?
Yeah, they do it. No. They look at the whole concept of Fard al-Kifaya and Fard al-Ain. All the madhab have that.
All of the time.
Yeah. Sometimes they may debate what falls under that category, but all of them have that. And the general definition is that it's an obligation on the whole of the community, not just on the individual, until somebody performs it. But there's some trickery there. I shouldn't say trickery in a bad way. I should say some confusion from the angle that, okay, well, how is it going to be done if the individual doesn't do it? So an easy way to say is that the Fard al-Kifaya or communal obligation is looking at the action and it's not looking at the individual. This is an action which the whole community has to perform, right? And if some people do it, then we're not responsible for it. We're not sinning. We're not blameworthy. Whereas Fard al-Ain is looking at the person, the individual. See the difference? Fard al-Ain is saying, this is your individual responsibility. It's not looking at the action.
Not the actions of the community. For the end is just what you will be held accountable.
Yeah, you're looking at the individual. With the Fard al-Kifaya, you're looking at the action. Whoever performs it, so what? But the Fard al-Ain, an individual has to perform it, right? We're looking at the individual performance. Is that clear or no?
Yeah.
Okay, barakallahu fikum. Assalamu alaikum.
Five things about Islam. Five things that you mentioned is coming out of the book, right? The economic, the lineage, and it's coming out of the book. Right?
Yes, the book has it. It's called Maqasid of the Sharia, or Objectives of the Sharia.
It's available online PDF.
Yeah, I have to ask them how to get the book to you. How to get it to you. Because if you signed up for the class.
Another thing is that the two classes, in 1 week.
Is a lot.
I think so. And I don't know, but other people may not agree with me. But the two, if you're just starting, it's a course. It's not like, I thought that it would be just lecture, but it's not like that. It's a class.
Okay, let me talk to them about that.
Because the parallel is once you start out, you don't want to
Yeah, dip out.
and then you have to, like you're saying, that there will be book, and I think